Amen. We're very delighted to opening our first keynote session. I know that still our colleagues are coming from the breakfast, and we had a wonderful night last night with all the performance and all the introduction to the conference. And it's an exciting time that we have an opportunity to meet face-to-face here. So therefore, we are going to start the first session, and immediately after this one, we have the second plenary. So it's back-to-back. The time is a bit perhaps short, I understand that, but I already put my apologies to our distinguished speakers that we were hoping that actually we can manage and get the presentation, listening to the wonderful experience and also the work that these colleagues have done to getting our way for the exciting the next few days in the conference. My name is Abbas Rajabi Fard. I'm from Melbourne University, and I'm very delighted to chair this session this morning. Our theme of the session is about geospatial excellence for a better living, digitalization and modern surveying, and cadastre in the post-COVID era. This is very important because we are now getting out of the COVID. We have all experienced differently with different pressures, different also new norms of living. So therefore, we're looking forward to listening to our speakers, to sharing with us their experiences and also their lessons that hopefully we can learn from that and taking that one over and also adopting. We have three distinguished colleagues this morning joining us for the presentation. Two of them from here, and we have also one online going to join us. I would like to invite our speakers, Ms. Eva Surma and Professor Pavel Hanus, to join me on the stage, and then we can start the session, please. Please join me to welcoming our speakers. What I would like to suggest the session, we're going to listen to all the three speakers, and then we keep the time, hopefully, for the last part for the questions and answer and have a conversation. And I already had a pleasure of meeting our colleagues and also share our plan, and hopefully we have enough time to have a bit of conversation, and we take it out. And I'm sure our speaker is going to be very happy for you to approaching them after the session, then we can continue our conversation. So with that, I would like to start by introducing our first speaker this morning, Ms. Eva Surma. She's Director, Head Office of the Geodesy and Cartography in Poland. The topic that she's going to present is the activities of that office during the pandemic. And that's what we are very interested in, to listening and hearing the areas. Eva has a master's science degree and also postgraduate studies in GIS. And she has work experience with Inspire initiatives, implementation rules, and also experience working internationally and applying series of knowledge and experience in different jurisdictions, and also applied those elements into several towns and also counties here. At present, she works as a director of the Strategy International Cooperation and Public Information, Department of Head Office of Geodesy and Cartography. With that, I would like to invite her to presenting her talk. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming for the Monday morning session. As Mr. Chairman said, I represent Head Office of Geodesy and Cartography, and on behalf of Surveyor General, my colleagues from the head office and myself, I would like to give you a few words today about our activities during the difficult pandemic time. Yes, so we started with the very good technical base, with the technical process, so we had very well organized infrastructure for remote work. So thanks to that, we were able to work at our homes as we were at the office. And we were working remotely for almost 2 years. Yeah, it was, for us, it was fairly easy with the software, with some facilitation, like the technical facilitation. We could access also all the servers that we had in the office, which really facilitated our work. So we had a good base, and we started to work as usual. We made a lot of changes to our geodetic and cartographic law and corresponding regulations. We changed 14 regulations. It resulted with the improvements for the land surveyors, acceleration and of investment and construction process in Poland. Worth to mention that according to this regulation, only until 31st of December last year was allowed to produce paper documentation for land surveying works, which was really a big step in digitizing geodesy. Also worth to mention is the introduction of network services for the publication and data sharing in geodesy. Some more changes that the legal changes include, as I mentioned, the WMSs, the WFSs as the network services, web services. We also simplified data models in our database structure. Also to facilitate our GML schemas, we introduced a separate repository. We took it out from the regulation because it's sometimes quite hard to change the regulation, so that's why we put this to some separate repository, right? So we also did some reduction of amount of information stored in databases. And as an example, we reduced number of building types from 170 to just 10. And also, the legal changes resulted to open our data. We opened more data from our central geodetic and cartographic resource. So 2020 also was a crucial year to open our data. You can see the orthophoto, LiDAR data, topographical data, DTM, very detailed model, and some basic data about land and buildings. All this data and services are accessible, we heard yesterday, are accessible through our geoportal, geoportal.gov.pl, the service that users can access in order to download data, to view data, to search for some information, to search for metadata, and I will show you later on to even do some analysis. And also worth to mention that the Surveyor General of Poland develops and maintains the geoportal, but also with cooperation with other organizations that are involved in building the SDI in Poland. And as an example, because since we opened the data, we know the user, we knew the user requirements, but we also wanted to give the easy access to that data. That's the example of downloading the data directly from the geoportal, right? So the complexity is high, and if you want the specific area to download, you just indicate, and you have it on your computer in the, for example, the JPG file, so it's physically stored in your computer, right? So it's fairly easy to download the required data. That's the example of Krakow, the castle in Krakow. And also the analysis, not only the data, as I said, services, but also some useful analysis. You can see here the visibility along the line with the profiles, but we have other opportunities, other possibilities like landmass volume, right, to plane, some visibility along the line, surface, and etc. And here is some statistics. You can see the autumn months, the most downloadable months. but so far more than 1,000 terabyte was downloaded, right, from our resources. And also it started when we opened the data, which was the last day of July 2020. Okay, so we did some changes, we opened the data, but now we know how important it is to teach the society to use of SDI, to take advantage of this data, right? So we had an experience in capacity building, in trainings, and also we started a training in June 2020, some power project to train from SDI, but it was all project was taken online, so it was quite a big challenge. We managed for the whole year to train almost 1,000 participants in the online mode from different divisions, from different domains, and the online training was like 5 days a week, 4 hours per day. So it was a big challenge, but we were really satisfied with the results. So the whole project was online. But we didn't stop only in Poland. Again, in March, thank you. In March 2020, we compete for the twinning project with the colleagues from the Netherlands and Croatia. And again, in September 2020, we start to run the project. And here is the example of our 2 training sessions. And with more information, I would like to invite you today in the afternoon. My colleagues from Croatia, Sanja Zekusic, will tell more about this project. Okay, and another good examples of our data that we give to our users, to the community. Here is the utilization, is the example of utilization of our services in some governmental services. Here is the e-construction service, and as you can see on the slide, as a background are the data that we open, right? The land and building registry data, some some topographical data, orthoimagery, etc., right? So they are utilized also in some governmental services. But not only. Also during the pandemic, we were running some kind of competitions to see how our data are used, right? And here are the examples of the best use of our data and services. It's a tree map on the left-hand side and some real estate advertisement. On the right-hand side, you can see that the potential buyer, they could see not only inside the potential product, which is real estate, but the outside also, right? So he can imagine where he could buy the apartment, how the vicinity around will look like. And it was based, among others, on our data. Also, very interesting project from students from Poznań, from the Polish mountains, the crown from the Polish mountains. It's also very useful application where you can see all the peaks from the Polish mountains, also based on our data. And with this accent, I would like to also invite you for tomorrow technical tour to our head office of geodesy and cartography, to GIS department on Olbrachta Street, when we will tell you more about our activities and about our products. And thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much for a wonderful on time, and not only on time, actually we have the luxury of having a few more minutes, and hopefully at the end we can go for the question and discussion. We really appreciate again and wonderful experience that you just shared with us. I would like to now move into our second speakers. The second speaker is going to be online. I'm hoping that our colleagues can bring Ms. Romayana Tuchomska. I hope that actually I pronounce her name correctly, and I apologize if not. So but she is actually one of the greatest colleagues that we have from FAO, from United Nations. Just want to make sure that if she's online, oh, you are. So thank you very much and very welcome. We're very happy to have you with us, Rumaya. And we know that you're going to share with us a very great project that you and the other colleagues from the other agencies that have been working on. And we are looking forward to hearing the experience and also the trust of this particular project. So I would like to give a bit of background about our speakers. She is currently a Senior Land Administration Information Technology Officer of the United Nations FAO based in Rome. She has a practical experience in 26 countries across Eastern Europe, Asia, and Africa in the design, development, and implementation of large-scale complex information systems for land tenure, indirect taxation, and also building a spatial data infrastructure. She's also leading various innovations to support countries to make better use of available data and also technology. She has been working on a number of projects recently, and one of those is the e-book on digital transformation and the future role of the land administration. And in combination with that, she's also working on another, again, project, which is a knowledge for investment brief, which is part of the area that she has been putting together the case for sustainable digital transformation of land administration. This is the one that is going to be released and launched later this week. So with that, I would like now to inviting our distinguished speaker to share with us her experience and also the lessons learned. Over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thanks a lot. Good morning to everybody in the meeting room. I'm very happy to be among you today, and I want to launch 2 new publications. In fact, it's not a project, it's a publications, which are joint efforts from FAO, International Federation of Surveyors, and United Nations Economic Commission for Europe and its Working Party for Land Administration. The 2 publications are built on the foundation of well-known, globally accepted instruments like Sustainable Development Goals, the voluntary guidelines, the Integrated Geospatial Framework, and the Framework for Effective Land Administration. So what is, why we need these 2 publications, like everybody who asked, because there are so many guidelines and so many good instruments already available. One thing is the COVID-19 pandemic, which impacted the land administration, and we heard from the previous speaker how they managed to organize and how they did it quite well since, and they managed to work during the pandemic with the lockdown, with the staff sick, etc. And there was a lot of digital acceleration during the pandemic because we were pressed to use more digital services than the well-known paper records. And then there are many new lessons learned, which show us that we have to be better prepared. Some countries did better than others. Some were better prepared than others. So there are lessons learned, but there are also a lot of new challenges coming, like how you deal with the vulnerable groups. Are they more vulnerable? If you do digitization in the way in which is not well taught, then you can affect the vulnerable groups as well. Then you have cybersecurity challenges, and then you have data quality challenges and data completeness, etc. And it's getting more hard to obtain funding because there are so many competing priorities, and the governments have to deal with social, health, economic, climate change, and many parallel crises going now. So, the 2 publications, like one is a guide which provide various practical examples, lessons learned, challenges, and suggest way forward. So you'll find there a lot of interesting examples. Something can work for your country. Some countries will recognize themselves because there are many, many examples from across the globe. And then we have a shorter version, which is called Knowledge for Investment Brief. it is a short document which builds on the guide, but it's focused on the action plans development and also how to obtain funding. And it helps land administration authorities to talk in the language in which Ministry of Finance understand, in which donors and development partners understand. So you can make your case and you can better justify your requests and also compete with many other priorities which the government have to deal with. And they were prepared based on various webinars organized with FAO and Working Party for Land Administration during 2021 and 22, when those government agencies, they were pressed by the pandemic. They did a lot, but they had a lot of challenges. So they were very well organized and they make many events together with us to share good practices and experiences. And there was also the FIG Working Week last year where we share also joint sessions with a lot of experience. There was a conference organized with EU Joint Research Center also to share experience and many other events. The two publications are funded by FAO Investment Center. We have a drafting team from FIG, and there were many review rounds, like we review first the detailed table of contents, then the first drafts. We got many good suggestions, and thanks to all of you who contributed. And then we went through official peer review process, and then we developed the two publications, which, by the way, are available online from last Friday on the FIG Congress website. And you have the QR codes here from my presentation. You can download the presentation, the publications. And who is the audience? Like, we think it's decision makers and also leaders and practitioners. And why, like, land administration should be considered as priority? Like, we have this slide which was shown many times with the with the SDGs, all 17 SDGs, and vertical you have the global fundamental data themes which were defined by UNGGM. There are 14 which are critical for every nation to survive. And if you look at the data teams, critical data teams, most of them are under the cadastral and mapping authorities' responsibilities. In Serbia, for example, Serbia is custodian agency of 11 out of these 14. So it shows a lot this, like, these data are very much needed. During the pandemic, the data from cadastral and mapping authorities were very much used, like the building, the addresses, and others, together with statistical data. And one of the lessons learned was that the statistical data in many countries were not georeferenced. So they had to do a lot of work to help during the pandemic. But this is a lessons learned for the next round of censuses. Here is one example of from Spain. During the volcano in La Palma in Spain, Canaries Islands, in December 2021. This is just one example of digital disruption. During that period, 7,000 people were evacuated, 3,000 buildings were destroyed, and you see another damages listed above. And how the land registry dealt with this. Like in Spain, all these records were already in digital form and they were protected, so there were no damages in the records. And then a special web service was very quickly designed to help citizens which are affected by the volcano to obtain their property records and also to put their claims and ask for compensation. So this is one example of how land administration can help in a broader context when some crisis appears or for economic development as well. It's another example because we had a lot of questions during the drafting about the vulnerable groups, how they're affected by this accelerated digitization and digital transformation and how they can benefit. And there you have to show the case. Like this is one example from Western Balkans. This is North Macedonia. Countries from Western Balkans in 2013 organized themselves. They have gender equality teams in each country, and they took data from the property registers and show the women ownership and women as owners or co-owners. Like you see, most of Macedonia is red, meaning that they have less than 15% of records with women names as owners or co-owners, even if they own 1%. And they were very, politicians and decision makers were shocked from this because they were always saying, oh, we are in Europe, we don't have any problems. And then they did a lot. And in 5 years, we took data again from each of the Western Balkan countries. And you see North Macedonia is almost green everywhere, which means that they have quite good already gender ownership, like it was increased with more than 10% for 5 years period only. But there are many other benefits for vulnerable groups, like with simple applications on mobiles, because it's difficult for everybody to download data and manipulate data. But for example, in Croatia, there is a simple website on simple mobile service, but it's in many other countries for most used services, like it's not just data, it's some kind of services which are needed. Also, poor people, like vulnerable groups, if they want to obtain social compensations, in most of countries, the law requires they to prove that they don't have properties, and they have to go from door to ask this. With this digital data, the services can be made available directly to the Ministry of Social Affairs, and they can see that without asking people to go from one door to the other. And there are many other benefits. They don't need to travel. And there are countries which are large countries, like you may have property in one part of the country and to travel from another part of the country to obtain records. So it saves time and money as well. You'll find in the book many examples. Most of the examples are from UNEC region, which cover 56 countries, but also from Asia, from Africa, and from Latin America. Because we were thinking, we documented the lessons learned and also the challenges from UNEC region, but we were saying, are they globally useful and can other regions learn and how other regions were doing? So we developed another chapters for Asia, for Africa, and for Latin America. So you can find good examples and records in cases which can be useful for your country. When you do digital transformation for land administration, it doesn't work in isolation. You need allies like the courts, the citizens, also the notaries, other municipalities and others. So one of the pictures here is from Serbia, and this is their allies. And based on the NSDI geoportal, which is called GeoSerbia, the government saw during the pandemic how useful they were and how quickly they managed to integrate data from different sources and provide services which were needed for very important decisions related to the lockdowns, for health, which hospitals are available, how many places, etc. Also for the economic development and for agriculture, where to do the lockdown not to affect the spring time during the first year when people have to go on the field. It was very much used during the pandemic, and now it's a new risk register built on NSDI in Serbia with all key risks already with services, and they're much better prepared now. You have Vietnam here, and in Vietnam, the government see that it's a very fast growing economy, fast developing, and they saw that digital transformation is the way in which they can handle the situation much better. They developed e-government strategy, and they identify key data sets, which are about 20. 6 of them are under the responsibility of General Directorate for Land Administration. So now they have to digitize 6 data layers, develop multifunctional cadastre system, link with e-government, link with NSDI, etc. It's another example from Rwanda and from Brazil, but the time is very short to show you everything. In Africa, there are 80% of people with mobiles, but still very low coverage of internet. So it's another challenge there, how to ensure connectivity. Also, the governments face difficulties to convince people to officially record their transactions. So here is one example, you can read it in the book, from a blockchain-based application, which is a new one for testing where people can put their transactions and to be more secure.
Ms. Rumiana, can you hear me? So
Yeah.
I appreciate that if you can wrap up in about 2 minutes.
Yes, I'm finishing. I'm finishing. Like the
Oh, wonderful.
presentation is.
So wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you.
I finished. Uh, just a second. So, how to move forward the implementation? We don't suggest new things to do, like build on what we have. The integrated geospatial information framework provides 9 strategic pathways which are interlinked. And we heard from the previous speaker, it's not just the innovation and the data, but it's also the policy, the legal framework, the capacity, etc. And we are suggesting to use one of the methodology which worked quite well for the integrated geospatial framework developed by the World Bank with support from FAO, which says do a baseline assessment, then look at the government top priority areas and see how your data and your services can help the government to deal with the most pressing issues. Build the case with socioeconomic benefit analysis to show that the money which you are asking, bringing good benefits for the poor people, also for vulnerable groups, and for the society and the economy. And you'll find in the book several keywords for the future land administration: intelligent, interoperable, inclusive, interactive, incorporated, invested. And there is a way how to do the action plan development. And that's all, like how to use these books. You have to use it for learning, for advocating, and for communicating. And I like a lot the Polish representation of the open data for which the previous speaker was talking about. So this is a good way to show what you have and to make your data more usable. And join us in the next session when we can present much more about these 2 books. It's on 14th of September. And I think this is all from me, to whom we have to thank. It's many people. The drafting team is mainly from FIG. It's the coming chair of FIG Commission 7, the coming chair of Commission for Young Surveyors, Claudia, who is from the Young Surveyors group, and many, many colleagues I listed here, which contributed. Thanks a lot to all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thanks.
much. Thank you very much for wonderful presentation and sharing a lot of actually good areas that we can consider. Please stay with us as we're going to have a conversation after the next presentation. So with that, I would like now to move to our next speaker, Professor Paweł Hanus. Hanus is from AGH, University of Science and Technology in Poland. His topic is going to be better living after COVID, the surveyor point of view, which is great, and we're looking forward for that. Paweł, please. Paweł is a specialist in cadastre, real estate management, and spatial planning, an academic professor in the Department of Integrated Geodesy and Cartography at the AGH University of Science and Technology. He has been also a national delegate of Commission 8 in FIG, and also special author and also co-author with more than 100 publications. With that, I would like to give you a floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for introducing me. The topic of my presentation is related to the functioning of a surveyor during and post-COVID. The period from March 2020 to this year has been very difficult for everyone. This pandemic has caused significant changes in the way almost all professions function. Of course, the job of surveyor is not exception for this. As a result of adapting to this challenging time, many steps were taken to limit or totally eliminate direct physical contact. Looking at the restrictions that were introduced in connection to the pandemic, in my opinion, in Poland, there were 3 which affected the functioning of a surveyor the most. First limitation was related to the closure of Geodetic and Cartographic Documentation Center. In the middle of the pandemic, traditional form of work such as collection of materials from the documentation center or the handing over of ready-made technical reports of the work performed couldn't work through physical contact. While there was a possibility to perform the physical measurements, there was no support from the Geodetic Documentation Center in traditional form. The second limitation was related to the temporary absence of employees of serving companies or their inability to work from an office. Additionally, we have problem in managing the implementation of geodetic works. It means deadlines, person existing, work from dependent of third parties. Not all limitations were overcome, as some for required revocation, while others were resolved in more systematic way in Poland. One of them was the acceleration of the digitization process of the geodetic resources, concept of which I will discuss in next slides. Another solution concerned the advancement in the implementation of e-services for the management of geodetic works and management of geodetic documentation for other entities, for example, landowners, designers, and etc. During the pandemic, in many regions, the facility of reporting geodetic works, downloading resource materials, as well as sending complete technical documentation by electronic means was introduced. Of course, such solution required not only the creation of an appropriate system, but also the digitization of the geodetic resource or the legal possibility of transferring technical documentation electronically. One of the basis solutions which enabled the functioning of geodetic works during the pandemic was the digitization of documentation collected in the state geodetic and cartographic resources in Poland. Before we continue, you can see in the slide, in the screen, the concept of geodetic resources in Poland. The geodetic resource, apart from the materials created during the performance of geodetic work, consists of 12 databases kept for whole country. One of them is cadastral database. Moreover, each geodetic work requiring notification to the office is reported at the appropriate level, central, voivodeship, or powiat level. The relevant office, after notification, issue the documentation necessary for the performance of survey job. After completing the job, the office employer verifies the technical survey documentation prepared by the surveyor, which is the result of the job. For the majority of surveyors in Poland, the most important and frequently used resource is the powiat resource. Many types of surveying work include updating the data of this resource. From the point of view of the contractor of geodetic works, in particular those carrying out operation during a pandemic, it's important that the materials provided by the documentation are digital and that are made available electronically. The regulation in April 2021 in paragraph 7 states that the geodetic resource in paper form should be immediately converted to digital form in the PDF format. In the pandemic, most of the geodetic centers serving the geodetic resource during the pandemic completed this digitization. Although such legal solution existed even before the pandemic, their implementation significantly rose during this period. In practice, the use of digital materials is based on the spatial and thematic analysis. This slide presents the example of internet services from a surveyor's point of view. The surveyor, after having previously sent a registration application to create an account in the system, may logging the surveying work system. I show two most commonly used spatial e-services system in Poland. In practice, they support the majority of powiat-level geodetic documentation centers in Poland. After entering the welcome page of the system among many types of e-services, the surveyor chooses a portal intended to support the surveying works. Entering the module of the handling of works, we get to view, among other things, like previously reported geodetic work by us, materials made available in digital form, as well as submission of new geodetic works. Submitting a new job involves completing on electronic form, providing the work manager the choice of the purpose of geodetic work. Moreover, it also contains the option to determine the area scope of this work. Scope is defined either by specifying the number of parcel and cadastral unit, or by an independent polygon defining the scope of work. Of course, we still have a preview of the cadastral map containing the basic and special elements like parcel boundaries, buildings, parcel numbers, and the like. After approving the new work, the surveyors waits for the automatic transfer of documents that should be used in its implementation. After confirming the acceptance of the application for geodetic work and paying the fee, surveyor receives materials whose special scope to some extent coincides with the special scope of submitted work made before. In the presented picture, you can see the list of materials made available. We have here, among others, confirmation of the job application, document for calculating the fee, a list of surveying works that may be useful in the independent of work, as well as special data of GML format containing special object that can be displayed in CAD program. This picture shows document informing about the technical reports and other documents that can be used in the implementation of work. And last feature is displayed GML file in CAD program. It should be added that presented solutions were possible after the introduction of appropriate legal regulation. Many of these regulations were expected in Poland to be introduced before the pandemic, but the pandemic speeded up this process. On the presented slide, you can see Ordinance of August 2020 regarding the standards for the performance of geodetic works in Poland. From the point of view of the surveyor performing the work, paragraph 35 is particularly important here, which says that the surveyor have to provide surveying documentation in digital form in PDF format, and that such a document must be signed with a digital signature as well. From 2021, all surveyors resulting from surveying works requiring notification are transferred only in digital form. In closing, I would like to mention the regulation related only to some geodetic works are the most frequently performed in Poland. Development and map for design purposes and as-built inventory of buildings. It's worth adding that in Poland, a significant part of design studies and as-built inventories is still carried out on traditional analog map. Nowadays, surveyor can place on this map information about positive verification technical documentation prepared by them. Office close confirming the positive verification on the technical documentation isn't needed in these two types of work. On one hand, presented regulation was dedicated by the desire to accelerate the investment process, but on the other hand, it is made it possible to eliminate the needed to confirm the result of works by the Geodetic Documentation Center. Finally, even the needed to contact the office has been eliminated. Despite the difficulties resulting from the pandemic, it's worth mentioning that many positive changes it brought. In dealing with the consequences of the pandemic, development has accelerated in many areas. In my opinion, in Poland, the most important positive changes are faster introduction of e-services, digitization of the geodetic resource, elimination of the needed for direct contact with the office, this meeting electronic documents. Of course, it's my opinion. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for, again, great presentation, and also very on time. I appreciate that you left us with a very good timing for the conversation. Just want to check that if our speakers online is still on. Rumiana, if our technical colleagues can actually bring her back on the screen, then we can open up for the questions. Would you please just confirm that if she's still online? While you're getting on that one, I would like to start and just going through the three, again, very good presentation and different dimensions of the experiences that actually each of our colleagues have gone through with their team. I would like to start with Eva, and in particular, the great presentation and also about the development of a spatial data infrastructure and services during the pandemic. I just wanted to see if there were any challenges that you can highlight that you have faced during that type of processes. You have mentioned about the very good, again, the progress that you have made in this, but I'm just interested to know if there were any challenges that perhaps we can learn from that.
I know, you can hear me? Yes? Yes, the pandemic was a very difficult time for us, especially at the beginning. I think the beginning of pandemic was, people didn't know, right, what will happen. We knew there is a change. Sometimes it was quite difficult to convince people to change the way they were used to work, for example. But in terms of our SDI, as I mentioned, it was also a time where we gather a lot of organizations, the data of these organizations to our geoportal. It was also challenging, but we were able to make it. Of course, the physical meeting would be easier, right, where we meet in person. But also thanks to the technological equipment, technological revolution, also thanks to pandemic, it was quite, let's say, okay to organize. For example, I didn't mention, within these 2 years, we organized 40 video conferences. It was more than 30,000 participants. So we also try to find the way to communicate with the people, with the users, with other organizations that are involved in the SDI. And also in terms of our portal, where we wanted to have much more users and to take advantage of what we released. We were also, I mentioned about one project, but we were also running some trainings on request. So not only from the domain of geodesy and cartography, but also from other domains that they were interested to use our data. So
that's wonderful, again, to hear, and what we have learned through the COVID, and also connecting again back to the societies, and of course experiencing series of new norms, but at the same time also opportunity to bring in what you just said about 30,000. I mean, I've been in that type of meetings, but if we were supposed to be meeting in person, we maybe have not that type of opportunity to accommodating this. But then through this, I think there are some good lessons or positive, perhaps, I mean, the lessons that we can continue to adopting in our operation in the future. Just to continue on that point about that, were there any, perhaps, implication related to the legal? I'm just thinking about if there were any privacy issues or anything that you were, or you had to also deal with that?
Yes, so of course there were some legal also challenges, but most of the data we opened, they didn't touch, I would say, the personal data, personal issues. but also as an EU country, we have this GDPR rules. So even if something happened, we have the procedures to avoid such a situation, right? So, and also in the GeoPortal, also users have to be aware that it's not for the official purposes, right? So they again have to go to the specific office, as Pavel mentioned about the documentation center, and give the data regarding, for example, the name, right, the private data in terms of some, I don't know, real estate businesses, etc. Right? So there were some issues, but we have the procedure to manage it, to tackle with that. Yes.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. Just double checking if our second speaker is still available online.
Yes, yes, I am.
Hear us?
Yes.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you very much. What I would like to, again, thank you for sharing the great work that you have done with different case studies. I'm just wondering, particularly based on your extensive experience in different countries, what would be your takeaway message to giving to all of us as surveyors if we're now going to adopting and modernizing our land administration system, and in particular with the two major initiatives that you have gone through those, and which again I would like to congratulate you and the team for the great work that you have done, and you're going to launching this to again particular books that we are really looking forward to receive that. But if you can share with us perhaps a takeaway message or anything that as a highlight of this work, and in particular based on your, again, experience in different countries.
Yeah, thanks very much. Like there are many, many takeaways after every single chapter in the guidelines, which we publish. But from my personal experience, I like the Dutch saying, think big and act small, because you have to have a good vision. You should know where you are going, but then you have to show quick success stories, because no one has these land administration systems are very time consuming and money consuming. You have to start to build right from the beginning, like a house foundation. I make very often comparison how you build a house and how you build IT system. So you build the base good, and you show some good success stories, because no one will wait 10 years to build the whole system. So you know you are doing right, but you have to provide some quick services, some access to data. You have to work on data quality. You have to know that cybersecurity is getting really, really a serious problem. Capacity is very much ignored by the government. They want to put more investments on innovations, on equipment, but people should be trained and they should learn, and also the users of the systems. We had recent case in Serbia when after years asking more staff, they got 400 new positions, and they didn't manage to fill 10% of this. Like you advertise and there are not people ready to come. So there are many, many challenges, but I think we should be very smart. The knowledge for investment brief have small steps, how to do first year, second year, third year, how to build your case. And the final word I want to say, land administration is not in isolation. If you make a case, I want this for land administration and cadastre, people are sick to listen to that. But if you say, okay, we have like this health pandemic, we have floods in Vietnam, like it's a lot of water around there. So if you say, if we have this data digital, we can offer this and that, and showcases like in Volcano in Spain, how land administration deal well. So we have to put the land administration in a big picture, not in isolation. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, and great point that you've shared. Thank you. Paul, what I would like to, if you can perhaps a bit emphasize on the quality check and auditing, because you actually mentioned about the process that you have gone through, an automated series of activities over there, particularly that we were not able to meet in person, and you put the system to operating that. If you can emphasize on the quality check or any auditing of the, or validating those kind of data, would be appreciated. Thank you.
In Poland, validation of documentation prepared by the geodetic doing by the documentation center, by the employees we are in the documentation center. If we send documentation, technical documentation for the electronical, validation is the same. So quality is the same level as before the pandemic period of time. So in this point of view, nothing is changed. We change method to upload documentation after making and surveying work. We may use SE services to download documentation from documentation center. After that, we may go to the field and measure something, prepare documentation and printing to PDF format, signed and sent to documentation center. Verification was the same, is the same. So in this, nothing changed in this time, in this part.
Thank you very much. I'm conscious of time. We are reaching to the time that we had, but I really enjoyed very much of all the three presentations. Great, again, lessons and experiences that have been communicated with us, and I hope that everyone's going to be safe and also continuing advancing on the work and learning from the experience that have been documented in different jurisdictions. So with that, please join me to thanking all the three speakers that we have, and I'm sure again they can be very happy to, if you want to have, if you have any questions, that you can approach them and discuss those points. So thank you again very much for that.